Welcome to Unleashed at Work and Home. I'm Colleen Pilar, and this is where pet professionals come for honest conversations about what it really takes to show up for yourself while serving the animals you love. If you've ever felt caught between compassion and exhaustion, you're in the right place. Here we explore what it means to reconnect with your inner wisdom and rediscover the joy that brought you to this work. Make sure to join my email community at colleenpilar.com for gentle, practical insights designed specifically for pet professionals. Now, let's dive in. Welcome back to Unleashed at Work and Home. My guest today is Ann Howie, and she's a sort of different kind of pet professional, and I'm going to let Ann tell you all about what kind she is. So welcome, Ann.
Thank you, Colleen. It is truly an honor to be part of your podcast. Thank you so much for asking me. And yeah, it's not so easy to put me in a category. Part of my training and part of my experience, professional experience, is as a psychotherapist. The other part is as a dog professional, doing training focusing mostly related to therapy animal work, tiny bit about service animal work. And then so those two come together actually for me very well, and it's been a wonderful life. I am delighted to have been able to mix those two.
It is interesting how attracted we are to that combination. And I've had several guests who use therapy animals to do animal-assisted interventions with a whole variety of I don't know, modalities and services that they provide. And
Mhm.
it's a tricky thing to choose the right partnership, to be a good partner with that
Indeed.
animal, to have fair expectations, all the pieces. And that's how I was introduced to your work,
Mhm.
was when I was sharing some thoughts about therapy work with dogs and partnering, and someone was like, "You have got to read this book." And it was brand new at the time. Um, Partnering with your therapy animal, do I have that right?
Yeah, teaming with your therapy
Teaming.
animal. Yeah.
Sorry. Teaming with your therapy animal, and I'll link to that in the show notes, but it was really helpful that you were able to put into words so many things that I was sort of just going by gut and noticing, but not necessarily able to communicate to someone else.
That means a lot to me. Thank you for those words. Yeah.
So what drew you to that? What drew you to being the person who helped to help others figure out what matters in these connections, in these relationships, in these interactions?
Well, I grew up as an only child on a ranch out in the country. So I didn't have siblings to play with. I didn't have other neighbors to play with. I had the animals on the ranch. And so they were my playmates. They were my friends. I learned a lot about them and would literally play with, including the stallion, running around in the pasture together, and felt like he was communicating with me and I was communicating with him, and we could read each other well enough to not hurt each other. As an adult now, if I had a child doing that, I would probably have a heart attack. But it worked for me in my childness. And that was true, that awareness of animals as well. Now the fancy word that everybody's using is sentient beings. Those of
Mhm.
us who've been in this field just find that a new word for something that we have known and worked with for many years. But I knew that about them. There was no question. As I became older and was looking at ways of interacting with animals, the professionals were not teaching that. It was force and coercion and make them do what you want them to do. And so there was some, I guess, cognitive dissonance going on for me as I was trying to
Mhm.
figure this out. I tried to do what they were telling me to do, and unfortunately was able to do it for longer than I wish, but then that inner part of my soul spoke up, and I couldn't ignore that anymore. I had to say, no, I need to do this differently, and it can work differently. And then a few years later, the book happened. So, yes, there were so many things that I felt like people could do differently in a more respectful way with their animals, instead of using them, and I am
Mhm.
using that word intentionally.
Mhm.
Um, so I am delighted that the book has been recognized and responded to in basically such a positive way. Thank you for mentioning that.
Well, thank you for writing it. It's important work. You've sort of led into an area I always like to explore with starting with your childhood on the ranch. I love to ask people, what did you think when you were 10 years old that you were going to do as a career?
Mm. Well, I grew up with a father who was very directive and, oh gosh, I hesitate to really use the word abusive with the animals, but I believe that's what it would be called now. And um, so what I wanted didn't matter. And I had to really um, push that aside. Um, I was just going to try to figure out what my dad wanted me to do and do that as best I could to try to avoid emotional pain. Physical pain. Sometimes, I mean, I'm not minimizing physical pain, but sometimes
Mhm.
emotional pain, it at least can be of the same intensity, and
Mhm.
sometimes more, depending on what's going on.
Mhm.
So I love the question, and again, have an unusual, perhaps, answer of it really didn't matter, so I didn't get a chance to really think about what that was. I had some great people in my life adults in my life who saw at least some of what was going on in the family dynamic and did their best to encourage me and listen to me so that I could feel heard and as an individual. Uh, and they saw very clearly that I needed to do something with animals. And I had to just discount that again because that was not something that was going to be acceptable to my father. But then a couple of times tried to challenge him and survived literally as well as emotionally. So once I got my master's degree, and then read an article about what was then called pet therapy, it was like, "Oh, okay. Yes, this is how I can do that. This is how I can honor both parts of myself." Um, yeah.
Yeah. So was it pretty much a straight shot from college into psychotherapy? Like, you went into undergrad thinking, something in that realm and then continued on?
I wanted to, but psychotherapy was not something that my father was going to allow. And I was in my 4th year of undergraduate, I had tried about 12 majors, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. I think that's probably accurate. And he said, "You just choose something and get out." And I
Mhm.
chose theater, partly because I knew that that would really fry him. He would not accept that, but he had given me the directive and I followed it. So it was not a straight shot. And then there was a marriage that was a very poor match, that I knew from the beginning, but felt like I needed to continue. So did, and then needed to get a divorce. And then part of the straight shot became finding a wonderful man, incredible man, that I am still married to. What is it? 45. It'll be 46 years later this year. And he saw me as an individual and wanted to help me be the best that I could be. So it was through him well, partly I started applying for jobs that appealed to me, and when I wasn't hired, I asked them why, and they said, "Well, you need an MSW." And I said, "What's an MSW?" And then found that there was a clinical social work program in the city where I lived that was one of the top 10 in the nation, and applied and got in, and then that's where things came together a whole lot more. Probably more information than you wanted.
No, I love that. No, truly not. It's less than I want. It's, I'm so curious about people because our lives are rarely a straight shot, and there
Mhm.
are always these things that I don't wanna say take us off track, but we go in a variety of directions over the course of our life, and looking back, a lot of it can make sense. Like, we can see the
Mm,
themes, we can see the patterns, but in the moment, I think it's quite common for people to feel a little bit adrift.
mm.
Like,
Good
this all
word.
feels a little random. I'm not quite sure. And yet, it's nice to hear other people, how they've moved through things and how they continue moving towards something better, richer, fuller, more appropriate for them, what
Yes.
matters to them, because quite frankly, everybody has a story that'll break your heart,
Mhm.
everybody, and it's so nice to hear a story like yours where you can say, "And, look, here we are. I've been married for 45 years to somebody who sees me, actually
Mhm.
sees me and
Yes.
appreciates me as I am, and I do work that I care about." Well, hooray. Hallelujah. Like,
Yeah.
does that mean you never get to have a bad day? Absolutely not. But 10-year-old you didn't have anywhere near the autonomy.
Mhm.
And
Right.
so isn't it wonderful to see how you've made choice after choice after choice that's moved you ever closer to your true self?
Indeed. Yes.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing it, because I
Mm.
mean that's kind of what we do here, and yet it's not always easy
Mm.
to do it. So thank you. So what's when we think about that 10-year-old you, what do you think she would think if we could just like go back and whisper in her ear, this is what's ahead for you. This point right here. If she could see today, how would she envision the life you're living now?
I think that she would take courage and attempt to counter her father's wishes sooner. Um, Whether that would have gotten her to where this point any faster or not, who knows? That's not the point. But lovely if, as I look back, if I could have attempted a little bit more, um, then I feel like I would be perhaps stronger now. Seems like maybe I wouldn't have had to do that marriage. I don't know. But I also have to say, and it's embarrassing to say this, but if I had not had that first awful marriage, I don't think I would have appreciated my husband now as much as I do. So
Mhm.
there you have it.
Yeah, we do learn from things, don't we?
We do.
We learn what we like, we learn what we don't like, we learn how to appreciate, you know.
Yes.
My husband said something really funny this morning. I don't remember exactly what it was, but something like, "Well, I'm the one who brings sarcasm and pessimism to this relationship." And I'm like, "Oh, is that what I needed?" You know? But, like, those aren't actually traits that I have really high on my list of things
Right.
I really value, and yet, uh, all these decades later, yeah, that's what he brings, and a lot of other things too.
Mhm.
But, I might not have appreciated those either in the beginning.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have been able to see as, "Okay, okay."
Yeah.
Um, and there is a little bit of, I don't know, thinking tendencies. So, like, just now when I said that about my husband, his brain is wired to notice what's wrong and to fix it and to be, like, very engineering,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's a lovely, helpful skill to have. And mine tends to be more toward appreciation and growth and what's good here and what can we build on. Also, a lovely, helpful skill to have. And so sometimes our views are totally different on things, but the ability to support the views can be really
Mhm.
helpful.
Yes.
What's something that your husband excels at that is helpful to you because
Mhm.
maybe it isn't one of your sweet spots?
My husband is an engineer, so he's very engineery also.
Mhm.
Um, and he had not really been around animals, so bless his heart, being willing to allow animals into our lives, um, eh, I give him a whole lot of credit for that. Um, and his well, I'll give a story. We were washing our cars and once early in our marriage, first or second year, and the time came when there was some program, I don't remember if it was radio or television, it wasn't in the time of streaming and all that, that was the time when it was on, but we weren't finished washing the cars, and my husband stopped and walked in to the house to watch the program, and I was furious because we weren't done and things hadn't been put away yet. So he, excuse me, helped me learn that, things could be put away later. And if there's something that is important, it's okay for it to be important. And it's okay to pause some of these other things that also can be important, but maybe they don't have to go in such a straight or rigid line. So that essence of him has hugely been important to me as I've been able to become less rigid in my expectations of myself. I have
Mhm.
rarely been as rigid in my expectations of others as I am of
Mhm.
myself. Um,
That's very common, isn't it?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. The way you said that was really beautiful, and I won't be able to recapture the words, but the piece about, that there are a lot of things that are important and worthy of our care,
Mhm,
and it's okay to pause one to focus on another at times and to have this experience of we don't have to always keep, the nose to the grindstone, pushing, pushing, pushing because 'cause we're doing something important. Yes, yes, we are,
mhm,
and other things are important. And other things may have factors, like the TV show having a time factor. He couldn't do it an hour later. That
mhm,
wasn't going to work back then. Um, but also things like rest and relaxation. That seems to be a theme lately with, some of the people in my groups where they're talking about almost an inability to rest
mhm. Yes,
because the work that they're doing matters, and it does. It
yes.
does. What are your thoughts about that? Like, how do we give ourselves a little bit of space to allow something else to be important and not to be so rigid
Mhm,
within our, "Well, but I have to do this important thing."
yes. I have I'm thankful that relatively early in my dog training career, I was attending some conferences, and they were great conferences, good speakers, but some of them, the audience was really welcoming and supportive, and some of them, the audience was really cliquish. And I'm grateful that I was able to A, identify that, and then B, give myself permission to say, well, okay, then you don't have to go to this conference again. If it's uncomfortable, now we could, stream it or whatever, so we don't have to be around those people. But this is kind of a long way to get to my answer to your question. To surround ourselves, I have to surround myself with people who help me feel good.
Mm.
And I need to watch programs, listen to podcasts, read books that, okay, it doesn't mean that it's all Pollyanna. And yeah, I do watch a Hallmark movie periodically when I really need to know everything's going to turn out all right in the end. But I watch other movies too, and same with books. There can be a balance there, but that's the point, is the balance. Um, and I just stopped reading a book. I gave it far too much time. I was growing more and more uncomfortable with it, and my rule was to let it go, but for some reason, I kept listening and then was overcome, and I could also see my mood in the day was bleaker, and I just wasn't as effective. I wasn't sleeping well. I mean, it was what I was putting in. It was the
Mhm.
input, and I needed to make some changes. So, again, long way of getting to this about learning to listen to ourselves and then finding what we need. Yes, I will eat a Snickers bar periodically, but I also like broccoli, and my body needs broccoli more than it needs a Snickers bar. So I can have a Snickers bar, a little bit, but I also can have a whole lot of broccoli and salad and whatever else that's more nutritious for my body. Same thing with my mind. I need the nutrition for my mind, the spiritual energy that is nurturing as opposed to destructive. Because there's plenty of destructive stuff out there, far too
Yes.
easy to access it.
Yes. And not all that easy to avoid. So it's not even that it's easy to access, it's that it's kind of inundating us. And if we're not careful, we're not deliberate, we're not um, paying attention to the choices that we're making, we're going to be consuming some of that, not even realizing.
Very well said.
Um,
Yes.
I like your point about really listening to what it is that's right for you, and then making the deliberate choice to provide it to yourself. I think a lot of people override that inner voice.
Mm,
Like,
mhm,
they hear it, "This
mhm,
this this would feel so good if only I could, but I
mhm.
can't. I can't."
Right.
So I'm gonna ask you here, I often ask at the end of my episode, like, if I could give you a magic wand and you could grant a wish for pet professionals. I'm gonna ask it here. Like,
Mm.
if you could, bestowing a blessing or a gift upon us, what would you give us?
That magic wand would be the permission to listen to yourself, and then hope that that would also come with the permission to follow through with what you're hearing, because
Yeah.
those 2 are separate,
Mhm.
but we have to listen first before we can follow through. Yeah. My dogs are really good at listening to themselves.
Mhm.
So, we often talk about how all the things we can learn from our dogs, and I agree completely. Um, so maybe that's part of it too, listening to our dogs as well as ourselves. They're pretty
Yeah.
wise and a lot of the time.
They are. They are so wise, and I think they're lovely role models for, um, articulating their need, like,
Mm.
knowing their need and like, "Here is my ball, I'd love for you to throw it." "No, really, this ball.
Yeah.
I'd love you to throw this ball." Or, "I would really love dinner right now." Or, "How about you just scratch my hip right here?"
Yeah.
And there's no sense of like, "Well, maybe I shouldn't ask her to scratch my
Right.
hip." Please, please do ask. Yeah, so permission to listen to yourself and permission to follow through. Yeah, those are a little trickier for humans than they are for some
Mhm.
others.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so valuable. I think that's been for me a piece of really leaning into, well, I want to say adulthood, but really older adulthood. I mean, like, probably it wasn't until my 30s that I started to figure it out, and maybe my 50s that I was like, oh no, actually, I can listen to myself and I do have permission to follow through.
Mhm.
And I'm continuing to learn it. There's still moments where I'm like, am I allowed to do that? Am I allowed? But it is infinitely more comfortable over time in the long run to choose what's right for you than it is to keep choosing what you think is right for others.
Mhm. It
Um,
is a delicate balance. Um, the selfishness versus self-care conundrum. And
Mhm.
so much depends on what our early childhood training was about those
Mhm.
two things. Um, the if I well, I'm struggling a little bit here, but the balance again between when I listen, when I follow through with what I'm hearing from myself, and when no, I really do need to do this for this person, so that I'm still listening. Okay, if I just took care of all my friends' needs, I would never have time even for sleep or eating myself. And not that I have exceptionally needy friends. I like my friends and they go through stuff. And I'd love to be able to have the time to take over a casserole or some flowers or just sit with them for a cup of tea for a while. And I don't have all that time. So making those decisions, okay, yes, now as much as friend X could use a little bit of Y or Z, right now for me to be able to keep breathing, to keep working, to keep feeding my dogs, I need to take care of me. It takes practice to get that sense honed, and not that we'll always make the quote right decision. Yeah, we'll make decisions and decide, "Oh, yeah, could have done that differently." But we learn from it
Mhm.
and keep
We
going.
definitely do. We definitely do. Yeah, and we always will. Like, every situation has its own nuance and its own parameters, and but we learn from them.
Mhm,
And when guided by our own internal values, that it's kinda what helps. Like, that when you listen to your internal voice of what's it telling, like, which one is calling loudest at that moment,
mhm.
what matters to you.
Yes,
I
yes.
like to ask my guests to share some words that have meaning for them, and you shared a quote from Lou Holtz, and the quote is, "It's not the load that breaks you down, it's the way you carry it." So can you tell me a little bit about, like, how you came across that quote and what it means to you?
One of my favorite calendars is called Things Dogs Teach Us. It's a little page a day, and it has mostly cute photos of dogs. We all have our own opinions about what that is. And then there's a quote for each day. Um, and those quotes, sometimes I will pull off a sheet and save it and realize as I go back through the ones that I've saved, oh, I've saved that 3 times over the years. So I guess that's more meaningful to me, and others, aren't as meaningful, but they still give me a thing to think about,
Mhm.
that as I am beginning my day or needing to touch base with myself or my values, I can literally touch it with my fingers, touch it with my eyes, whatever. So that's where I found that quote. It was one of those pages on a calendar. And I have a stack that right now is probably about an inch tall of various pages from I have no idea how many years are sitting right here. And I will go through those periodically and take another look at them. So, yes, that quote is a way of encapsulating how I try to live my life. That some days the load is very heavy. Some
Mhm.
days tears are right on the surface. Some days my temper is short. And so, okay, I can then ask myself, how am I carrying this load? How can I shift it? Maybe even, is there someone who's willing to share it with me for a few steps? Just what are the ways I've got choices, in other words. I don't just have to do X, Y, or Z with my load. I can make the choice between X, Y, and Z. Um, and that is part of the freedom for me because there weren't those choices as I was growing up. I didn't think that
Right.
was really possible. So it's incredibly freeing to now look and say, oh, wow. And I still get surprised sometimes by, huh, there were choices there. I totally missed that.
Mhm. Yeah, we
But
do tend to come up with 2 choices and be like, "Well, I could do A or B." And
mhm.
there's normally so many more.
Yes.
So many more. Like, "Well, I don't like A or B, but I have to do one of these 2."
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Maybe not.
So,
Maybe there's a
yeah.
C or a D.
Yeah. And sometimes one of the choices could be talking to another person to see if they can come up with a few more choices.
Yeah.
Uh, just having a little bit broader view on things because it is tricky how we get ourselves into these
Hmm.
areas. I like the idea of how can I shift this load? Like to notice, okay, I am carrying something. Today's a day. I've got it. Ooh. And recognizing that and honoring that and saying, so how can I shift this load a little bit? How can I carry it a little bit more easily?
Hmm.
I also love that it's from one of those dog-a-day calendars, I use those a lot when I was training and doing school events. I would collect pictures of dogs and, like, put them out on the tables, and then we would have the kids act out the body language and try
Mm.
to talk about, like, "Do you think this dog is happy or sad?" Because there's a lot of pictures that the editors of the calendars think
Indeed.
are happy dogs.
Yes.
Like, "Oh, no, well, actually, that one's not so happy." I'm
Right.
like, "And if your body does that, how do you feel?" Um, so they're a wonderful teaching tool for me, but I would always have sort of a moment where I would be like, "Oh, you thought that was cute. Oh, dear."
Mhm.
Which kinda leads us back to your work. So when we're thinking about any sort of, um, therapy dog so when I was training, one common situation I would have is I would have a client who was very interested in doing therapy work.
Mhm.
And they would have a dog who was not very interested in doing therapy
Mhm.
work. And then I'd have another client who was not at all interested in it, and their dog would have been perfect. And I just wanted to set up like dating services
Yes.
between humans and dogs because I was like, oh. So, what's important for someone to consider when they're thinking, I would really like to learn more about this? What are some of the things that you'd like them to turn and look at their little canine friend and say, hmm, would this friend enjoy it too or not? Like, where do we
Yeah,
start?
exactly. First, in acknowledging that the dog has an opinion.
Mhm,
We as humans often think in terms of all dogs. Well, all dogs are this way or all dogs do that. And no, each dog is an individual. If we are talking about statistics, then we can say dogs. But when we're talking about one person, one dog, that's an individual. And that individual dog has individual preferences, likes, dislikes. So, really listening when you say, "Who are you?" to your dog, then what does the dog say? So we have to listen and then we have to believe them and not try to make them into, well, but if you just try it this way, I bet you'd like it. Well, maybe, but is the dog really liking it for the work itself, or is the dog doing it because you're asking them to do it? Um, Huge difference there. So
huge difference.
knowing that body language, knowing that dog, paying attention. Yeah, I have a dog right now who is I've never had a lap dog before. This is my first lap dog, and boy, am I learning just how wonderful it is to have 10
Mhm,
pounds of warmth on my lap,
mhm,
even in the summer. Uh, but with strangers, he takes a little while to get to know them, and then he makes a decision on whether or not he wants to really be around them, and so he's not the kind of a therapy dog that would be one to go into hospitals or nursing homes or whatever and meet
mhm,
strangers over and over and over again and snuggle up on their laps. He snuggles up on my lap, which is different from snuggling up on other people's laps. I
mhm,
know you know all of this. Um, and so that figuring out who your dog is, listening to it, paying attention, and then respecting it. Um,
Yeah.
allowing the dog to be who he is. It has been, I can't even count the number of years since I have had a therapy dog for my work. They just have not come my way. I've had some really amazing dogs, but they haven't
Mhm.
been dogs who've wanted to do this work. And my life I had really built around the idea of doing animal assisted therapy with my clients.
Yeah.
So I had to adjust because that wasn't what my dogs wanted to do. I hope that there's another magic wand moment. I want people to recognize that dogs have personalities and then listen to their dog when their dog expresses an opinion. I
Yeah.
hope you have two
I
magic
actually
wands.
yeah, yeah, maybe the first creates multiples.
Yeah.
My magic wand creates multiple magic wands so we can keep doing this. Because yes, we need all the blessings. I had to make that decision. I When my kids were young, I had a yellow lab who thought a school visit was a party thrown in his honor. Like,
Mhm.
he was just like, "This is amazing." And then, through my work, a dog came in to be evaluated, and this dog had just such a lovely temperament. He was sweet and gentle, and he was an elk-hound mix, and I thought, "Maybe this is my next preschool dog," maybe.
Mhm.
And I took him to preschools, and he was gentle and well-behaved and so sad. He
Mhm.
was just like, "Could we please leave? Because I didn't want to hang out with children." And it wasn't even the age of the kids. It was just like he would have liked each of these people to come to our house one at a time and
Mm.
pet him.
Mhm.
That would have been fine. We could have just spent our days having people come in and admire him and pet his lovely soft fur. But he was not into it, and the hard part for me was I got pushback from the schools because they were like,
Mhm.
"He was so good. He
Yeah.
was so what are you talking about?" Like, they
Yes.
did not see a difference between my dogs, and for one school, I would do all the visits in a week, so I would, like, take Gordo on, Monday and Edzo on Tuesday, and it was like bunching up these various preschool classes, and they didn't see any difference between if Gordo came or if Edzo came, and for me, it was dramatically different because Gordo, I was trying to keep from being a little too excited by all of it, and so I was like, "5 more minutes, baby, really?" So that
Yes.
piece of, like, can we train it, comes
Mhm.
into play sometimes too for people, and
Yes.
particularly I have seen it with people who are very hopeful that they can do animal-assisted interventions of some sort,
Mhm.
that when their pet doesn't want to be their working partner,
Mhm.
it creates a little bit of professional cognitive dissonance for people.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
you say you haven't had, like, a therapy dog as one of your dogs for quite some time.
Quite a few years. Yes. Um, for various reasons. But yeah, very important to listen to that. And I really appreciate what you were saying about how hard it can be with the pushback from other humans that don't see what you're seeing, and how important it is for us to stand up to them and be firm that we are our dogs or other animals' advocate like no one
Mhm.
else can be. Because no, others don't see it. I had similar with my Teaming with Your Therapy Dog book. The publisher gave me, I think it was 3 different photographs that they wanted on the cover, and none of those dogs were happy.
Mhm.
I said, "Nope, we're not choosing any of those." And similarly with my other book, Assessing Handlers for Competence, they got gave me photographs, and one even had a person. I think they might have just been scratching the dog, but the dog had extra skin or something, but it looked like the fingers
Oh,
were
wow.
dug in to the dog's skin, and that was the first thing I saw. Okay, maybe nobody else would have seen it, but I could not have that on the cover
Mhm.
of my book. So
Mhm.
there's so much education that is needed,
Yeah.
and which rolls back to your question about how we can find time for ourselves and make time for ourselves when there is so great a need out there.
Yeah. Yeah. It's tricky because there is so great a need. And so many people also providing education in ways that
Mm,
people can get it. Like, it's easy to think that some of what we communicate doesn't land because we're not necessarily there when the person has their aha moment.
mhm.
So I do always encourage people to just take heart that when you're helping someone understand their dog or other animal better, um, they might not have that moment right there with you. But
Exactly.
later they may really see what it is that you were trying to communicate. And
Mhm.
so to measure effectiveness in real time, I think can be really tricky for us.
Very well said. Indeed.
Well, this has been a really interesting conversation that's kind of wandered all over the place,
It
which I
has.
love those. I love those. So if people wanted to learn more about you and your work, how could they do that, Anne?
Well, thank you for asking. It's uncomfortable for me to promote myself, but I know that it is an okay thing to do. I'm working on feeling more comfortable with that. I am delighted that people have liked my book, Teaming with Your Therapy Dog, so well. And I encourage people who are interested. Uh, and it's even though the title has therapy dog in it, the information, the principles that are there work for a companion dog as well. So I hope that you might take a look at that, see if it speaks to you. Further, Assessing Handlers for Competence in Animal Assisted Interventions is another one of my books. And that's a little bit more for people who are working maybe in management types, coordinator types of positions, but it still gives some great information about dogs and the things that we can do to support our dogs. My website, I will warn people in advance. I love for people to come to my website, and updating my website is like the hardest thing for me to do. So it may not be exactly the most accurate, but you can always reach me through that email address or through my website email address. I would be delighted to talk with people further or email them further if they've got other questions. But those are the best ways for reaching me.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for talking with me today, Anne. It's been a pleasure.
It's been my pleasure and my honor. Thank you, Colleen. Best wishes. Happy New Year.
Yeah, that's our conversation for today. If something we talked about resonated, I invite you to sit with it. Notice what feels true and what you want to explore further. You don't have to have it all figured out to start moving toward what matters. Whatever showed up for you today, clarity, questions, even resistance, trust that it's pointing you towards something important. For more support, join my weekly notes at colleenpilar.com. And until next time, remember, you are enough, always, just as you are.